before I even messed with the fuel pump, the first thing I did was replace the crankshaft position sensor, because that, it's only like $25 and it takes less than 30 minutes to do. Well, that didn't solve the issue, and that led me down the road of testing the fuel pump and seeing the rapid bleed off. Well, it turns out the fuel pump was bad and was likely contributing to some of the hard starts, but not all of them. So what do we have left? Well, the camshaft position sensor on this truck is known to also go bad and cause the hard starting symptoms and other drivability issues. And I don't have any of those issues, it's just hard starts. So the camshaft position sensor is luckily cheap. Again, it's like paid $35 total with a discount at Napa. And it's very easy to change. It's literally right at the front of the engine, one bolt. Should take me like 10 minutes at most. So yeah, this is definitely a situation where one symptom can have multiple simultaneous causes, where one problem causes the symptom at some times and then the other problem causes it at other times. It just goes to show, like, this truck, has different common issues that contribute to hard starting, and, potential process of elimination, i.e. throwing parts at it, plus some diagnostic testing with the fuel pressure gauge is the only way to figure it out. Now, ideally, you'd have a advanced scan tool like the STAR tool to be able to test the electrical ignition parts of the problem. But anyway, yeah, definitely a bit of a saga, but I think once I get that camshaft sensor in, I'll be good to go. Well, upon closer inspection, I think I figured out what the problem is. So this camshaft position sensor right there, you see how it has that plug? It has a broken clip. So someone must have tried to replace this at one time and broke the clip, and they had two zip ties holding the two parts of the plug together. I've since, I'm not going to try and wiggle it, but those two halves kind of wiggle. So they must have put that zip tie to hold it together. So I'm guessing at least part of the issue is probably a weak connection from that messed up plug. Or it could also be the sensor's bad, but anyway, I can see why they sell that wire connector with the sensor at some auto parts stores. It must be a common thing that breaks. Heat of the engine all probably makes that brittle. So I'm going to see how difficult it'll be to replace that plug end, so I'm not trying to work with that janky zip-tied connection. I can't find a part number anywhere on this cam sensor, so someone replaced it, and maybe they just use a super cheap no-name piece of crap, because there is no part number on here. So yeah, I'll be putting the new sensor in, because who knows. But yeah, super strange. So while I'm replacing the connector, I'm going to try and actually, instead of cutting and splicing, I'm actually trying to unpin the connectors, or the little individual spades from the original connector plug, and hopefully be able to transfer that to the new one, because I don't like trying to cut and splice with so little length, and trying to trim all the shielding back and pull back enough slack to make cutting and splicing safer. It seems like so much more of a pain rather than just trying to splice, or not splice, but like I said, transfer these little spades that stick in the plug to the new one. So yeah, I replaced that connector with, yes, the dreaded wire caps, but hey, they work and they hold better than anything else that isn't soldering. But in the process of doing that, there's a vacuum hose going between some stuff here that literally just disintegrated as soon as it was bumped. So I went to replace that. But in the process of doing that, another harder to reach vacuum hose also disintegrated, and unfortunately, it's one that comes out of the bottom of the intake manifold all the way down there, so you cannot reach it. It is impossible to reach, and it's also essentially like built into the intake manifold. It's not like there's a nipple on the outside of the manifold for it to attach to, so it's a really horrible, stupid design. I tried splicing it with what was left sticking out of the bottom of the intake manifold. That just didn't work. That little piece just disintegrated as well. So unfortunately, the only option is to pull off the intake manifold and put my own little nipple on the bottom of the manifold so I can hook up a hose again. Because without that, there's I forget which sensor is controlled by that manifold vacuum source, but without it, things aren't going to work right. So yeah, one little stupid thing turned into a bunch of other stupid things. And yesterday, I spent a lot of time getting off all these stupid old crappy broken connectors. Someone broke all the clips on the coil pack connectors, apparently when replacing coil packs at one point. And frankly, I can't blame them. I mean, the plastic on these cars just gets brittle after 20 years. And of course, every single connector will fight you coming off. So it's just how it is. But anyway, I got most of the wiring loom disconnected. So I just got to unbolt the fuel rail and pop it out with the injectors attached. And then I should be able to unbolt the manifold. And I got new manifold gaskets, as well as fuel injector O-rings. Those weren't too expensive. But yeah, I'm hoping to God, after doing all that, that should be it. Because after that point, all the drivability issues will be solved. There shouldn't be any sketchy vacuum hoses. Before I took stuff apart, it was running good. It was firing up right away every time. So the new fuel pump plus the camshaft sensor definitely solved the running issues, and the transmission has been flawless since I replaced that conductor plate. Anyway, though, it's good that I'm doing this because there's just like a ton of leaves and like acorns and sticks trapped in there, and to me that's kind of like a fire hazard, having all that dried shit on one of the hottest parts of the engine. Again, there's tons of leaves and stuff crammed into the cowl and the rain gutters. So this thing sat under a tree or something. It filled everything with those. So this, I'm going to shop vac all that out, of course, before taking the intake off, so we can, clean up the engine bay finally. Intake manifold is off along with the injectors. So now I'm going to rig up a little port so I can hook up a vacuum hose on the underside of that intake manifold and just wait for my parts, hopefully to arrive tomorrow. The two manifold gaskets, the little valve gaskets, I forget what they're called exactly, and the O-rings for the injectors. Alright, so here's the intake manifold pulled off the truck. Just finished cleaning up the part where the gasket goes. And here is that piece of vacuum hose that broke. And if you can imagine, this is sitting upside down, so this is actually down in the engine bay. You literally cannot get that off. And as I understand it, that hose is like integral going down inside there. So ideally, we're going to take off that little nub and then get something that'll fit down in there securely to act as like a nipple for a vacuum hose that can be easily replaced. I saw one thing where a guy actually used like a brake line with a brake line fitting screwed in there, and then the brake line was bent upwards to act as a nipple. We'll see. And here's our simple solution. I used one of these vacuum tees with a slightly larger outer diameter than the actual hose. So this one, and then the one that goes into the remnants of the old hose in there. It's a little bit larger diameter, so it's nice and secure. Plus, if I do need to press something like a new hose on this fitting again, it's got these ears to keep it braced against the bottom of the intake manifold here. But this actually should make it very easy to route without risk of kinking the hose, since it comes out at a nice little angle as opposed to like the 90-degree bend it used to have to do. So yeah, should be fine as long as I own this thing. And at the end of the day, it's a beater, so I'm not going to go to the nonsense of like splitting this manifold apart and go through all that when all I was intending to do is just fix this. Whenever we're working on jobs, I try to order all the seals and gaskets and whatever I need ahead of time, because with German cars, it's very difficult to reliably get small little seals and stuff like that from auto parts stores, especially anything of decent quality. I also, with Mercedes specifically, referenced the factory like parts catalog to make sure that I got everything ideally ahead of time, or at least ordered while I'm working on stuff, so that way I'm not like waiting yet another week for parts to come in and holding me up from getting my repair job done. But despite my best efforts, it seems there's just always some little gotcha that I couldn't account for, that nobody mentions anywhere. It's not mentioned in the part manual. Basically, there's no way to know that you don't have what you need until you realize it firsthand. And here we have a prime example. So here's the fuel injector rail with all the injectors. There's O-rings that seal the injectors to the intake manifold, and there are little plastic like washers. Let's see if I can turn the light on to make it easier to see them. Yeah, you can see that one's a little bit broken. But they're these little plastic retainers that go on top of the O-rings. They're apparently called Pintle caps. And, well, as I discovered, they just randomly break as you're taking off the injector. And again, it's not mentioned in the factory parts manual. So what this means is, despite me ordering the O-rings and stuff, along with the exhaust gas or the intake manifold gaskets, thinking I'd have my parts by some miracle before the holiday and be able to get this job done before the holiday, nope. Discovered these Pintle seals are not stocked anywhere except some online stores. So here I am, halfway through the week. Of course, it's a holiday week, so I, of course, will lose a shipping day. So odds are it's going to be either Saturday or, knowing my luck, probably Monday before I can get these stupid little Pintle seals. Now, thank God they're little bits of plastic, because essentially what happens when you pull that injector rail off the intake manifold is those little bastards actually drop down into your cylinder head, down there where the valves are. Now, these little plastic pieces, they're either, they're going to get sucked into the intake, or they're going to get pushed out into the exhaust, depending on which valve it falls down into. Yeah, and good luck trying to get those little fucking things out. You can try vacuuming, whatever, but it's little pieces of plastic. Thank God they're not metal. But yeah, really fucking stupid design. Alright, so about a week later, here we are. Finally got the Pintle caps for the injectors. These little clearish white plastic caps. They're like little retainers that help provide a seat, I guess, for the injector O-rings. So both new O-rings have been installed on each injector as well as the caps. And I'm ready to drop the fuel rail back onto the engine, where the intake manifold's all mounted up. The new gasket, new vacuum hoses. So once I get the rail on, bolt that down, reconnect all the connectors, and fire this thing up. Well, she's purring like a kitten. You know, realistically, if I really want to keep this rig, I really should replace that main harness, because, like, I'd say at least 80% of the connectors for all the little sensors and coil packs and whatnot, all those connectors are busted up something bad, and I really could just replace that whole harness. It's all one nice little piece coming back to the central connection back there. But yeah, no vacuum leaks, no fuel leaks, no check engine light. Gonna take it for a spin and just ease into it. Well, the test drive did well for this girl. Yeah, smooth as can be, got plenty of power, transmission shifting real good. Yeah, so I'm starting to appreciate the relatively simple layout of what they got here. This, I think, 3.5 liter V6 stuff is actually pretty easy to get to under the hood for an 05. It's got a very straightforward fuel injection system. All my toiling and spending of money on parts was worth it, because now the truck starts like it should. Perfect. Just how it should be.